Introducing Chad T. Jenkins, a lifelong entrepreneur and visionary known for reshaping businesses to deliver remarkable returns. With 3 groundbreaking methods and boundless curiosity, he serves as a catalyst for business growth. Collaborating with leaders across industries, he uncovers hidden opportunities, achieving exponential enterprise value growth. Chad's track record includes 40 plus high growth companies and numerous successful growth partnerships. Now he empowers others through growth collaboration partnerships and the SeedSpark Growth Academy. His new book, Just Add a Zero, is a guide to outperforming competitors and achieving exponential growth through collaboration. You're going to want to stick around for today's episode because I'm going to have a great conversation with Chad. I just know it. Welcome to Rat Race Reboot. I'm your host, Laura Noel. And as a certified coach and former 27-year military leader, each week I provide bite-sized mindset pivots that will help you reset your mind, reawaken your spirit, and regain your control. All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of Rat Race Reboot. Chad, welcome to the show.
Miss Laura, thank you very much. I'm very excited to be here.
Oh, I'm thrilled to have you here too. I've been looking forward to this conversation. So I always talk about how we can get stuck in the rat race just by the way we are thinking and thinking about things and the way we approach our business and our life and our opportunities. So that's why there's so many goodies here that we could unpack as we were talking backstage. But I would love to hear about you first and foremost, if you don't mind, just giving an introduction to the audience and sharing your background, how you got to doing what you're doing these days.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. As far as where did all this come from? You mentioned that I classify it as the hamster wheel. So we're running on this wheel and we're just getting beat up. It's a rat race. How in the world do we get off of this? For me, I would dare say it started around 8 years old when I had to take the blinders off. Well, one, you don't know very much at that age. Of course, you've only been here for a little bit of time, but I figured out the rough order of magnitude of what my father made. And you mentioned the title of the book earlier, and that's one of the core concepts that helps with not getting stuck. Figuring out what my father made at that early age, and then I just do what my brain does, and I have to bite-size something. I did the reverse math and broke it down by the minute. It's like, oh, that number is nothing. And then I did something that I've been doing every day since I turned 8. I added a 0 to it because I definitely have big aspirations. I always have had. Felt like I should have been born in the middle of Manhattan. But no, I was on a farm in South Carolina digging post holes manually or putting a barbed wire fence. It's like, ooh, I think I might be wired up for a little something differently. So when I figured this out, I did the reverse math, and it got down to a very digestible number because it's by the minute. I just didn't contemplate how many minutes were actually in a year, and I added a 0 to it. Well, of course, when you do the math going the other way, it gets to be a big number very quickly. But that, and you mentioned empower earlier, that empowered me. And what it made me do in that very second is I had to think differently. How in the world is this little kid with no experience and what I felt at the time, no capabilities, which that wasn't true, and we'll unpack that shortly. How am I ever going to make that type of money by way of creating that type of value? So you'll notice pretty quickly, everything with me is how in the world can I take existing resources? It's not go buy this, go hire these, go expand in this market or launch this products. Like, how can we do exactly what we can where we are with what we already have? And that in itself is unconventional, at least in my experience, because oftentimes when we're speaking with business owners, they communicate about when the interest rates come down, we're going to do this, or when they pass that ordinance, or when we get this permit or the approval, or when they begin to put this road in, it's really going to change. It's like, how about now? How about today? How can we do what we can with what we have where we are? And the just add a 0 concept to really any numbers. And I use that in 2 different fashions. It is very, very easy for us all to say, oh, yeah, it's 1 million. Let's make it 10. We have 10 salespeople. Let's do 100. well, how about if you do it on the opposite way? We'll just take the salesperson or sales group an example. How can we create the same revenue? And today we have 10 sales professionals in our organization. How can we create the same revenue and even hit our budget and our forecast for this year with one? Right. So you're just putting the zero on the front. And whether you're putting it on the front or the back, in both of those scenarios, I would think the whole audience would agree, you must think differently to create that type of outcome from cutting it by 90%, or how in the world are you going to do the same, create this outcome with adding a zero instead of 10 million, it's 100 million. But okay, folks say, well, what if you don't make it? Great. All your contemporaries are trying to budgeting, forecasting, sometimes single digit. Good Lord, that's not very exciting. Maybe double digit, 20, maybe 30. They're going to stretch really far. How about 300? That type of thinking forces you to not be inside the confines of the convention. It also makes sure that you also don't have to be okay with the confines and the conventions of the normal margin in your industry. So hopefully it gives you a little bit of insight there.
Yeah, I love this idea of just adding a zero. It reminds me of what one of my mentors would always say is break it down to the ridiculous, because your mind plays tricks on you. So when you say,
absolutely,
I want to bring in this amount of revenue and there are a multitude of zeros and you're looking at the big number, how do you like, your brain can only process the smaller chunks. It can only process what you can process. It's so breaking it down to the ridiculous is really, in essence, getting your arms wrapped around this idea. Okay, I can believe this, because your belief is what creates the fact. So I love that you were doing that.
Yeah, the more you believe, okay, that's a whole nother place that we can go. Yeah, be believing and ultimately feeling combined with the believing. So what you believe in your head and feel in your heart becomes reality in your hand. And I've seen that just many, many times. I didn't have this awareness until doing a lot of research over the last couple of years, but I can look backwards now, and I've changed my environment, which changed the way that I thought, which changed the groups and people I was around, which changed the way I behaved, which changed the way I personally acted, which changed ultimately my personality, and it changed my personal reality. So it's that in itself, all stimulated from asking big questions and not following the same old convention that everybody else is operating with. It's like, why? Why would you do that? And a lot of times they say, well, we'll just follow best practices. We all know what best practices are, right? Yeah. Average. I'm not really shooting for average. I'm just not. So it's fundamentally adding that zero. Anything that makes you think unconventional will create those unconventional outcomes. And at least in my experience, has been a whole lot more favorable than just doing whatever everyone else is doing.
Yeah. That's so true. You can see the possibilities. Whereas if you are going with a best practice, well, that makes me think, when you're looking at a best practice, you're looking at what's been done in the past. Yes. And when you want to create something new, you might have best practices informed in your mind, but you can't look in the past and the future at the same time. So if you're creating something new that's not been done before, then you want to leverage that part of your mind, but use past data as an instrument, but not have it determining your path necessarily.
Yeah. So I do a lot of looking backwards, because of course it is perceived reality. And there's an example, but I use it as a frame of reference only. I understand now, and you obviously may know it much, much better than I, but I know that in our conscious mind on a daily basis, it's been proven that we're going to have 65 to 90,000 thoughts in a day. And I believe I have every one of those. What I further begun to understand as well, for most folks, more than 90% of those are the same thoughts that they had yesterday. So if we had the thoughts yesterday and we have the thoughts today, it's likely we have the thoughts tomorrow. You know what the next going to be the next day? The same darn day that 4 days was ago. I have no interest in that. So with this information now that I understand, I start very early in the morning leveraging my theta state when I first wake up to reprogram my subconscious and really leverage the capabilities that you have inside of yourself so that I can create the future that I want. I figured out a long time ago, if you want that future, the best way to start is to create it today. not tomorrow, not whenever something else is going to happen, but today is your day to get started.
Yeah, I love that. And I know that the audience is going to be like, oh, how does he leverage his theta state first thing in the morning? Because people are going to want to learn how to do that. So how do you do that? Everybody kind of taps in different ways. So I'd love to hear what you do.
So rituals are a big deal. I as well would subscribe to this methodology. So, but I go to bed at a very prescribed time, 8:58 in the evening. And so it's real easy to say, oh, I go to bed around 9. No, you don't. It is truly around 9, but it's probably never on this side of 9. It's always on that side of 9.
Yep.
When I figured out that as well, leveraging anchors. So 8:58 is my time. It's not anybody else's time. It's mine. Oh, every time you look at your watch and you start to leave, or you're going to get home by, you cannot help it. And I'll mention this quite a few times. Leverage the way your brain works by default to your advantage. I always do the reverse math. So it's not, I'm going to get home close to 9. It's like, no, I'm going to get home. I'm going to have 12 minutes to get my butt in bed. But being regimented on that as close as you can be. Again, my target's always 80%, right? Perfection is, there is no destination. So I know I'll never be perfect whatsoever. I just strive to be better tomorrow than I was yesterday. So this 8:58 is requirement. I got to hack my sleep today, not tomorrow. By nature, I'm going to wake up early. After doing research and understanding this theta state, and you can actually reprogram your subconscious. Being early in the morning, I found that your melatonin is at the highest during that particular time. And luckily, I was already waking up at that time anyway. Now, when I wake up or become conscious, I have a very regimented routine. I enforce and keep my eyes closed. Before I knew what it was doing, I began to box breathe so that I could become centered. And then I definitely have I am statements that I leverage. And what I've found as well is leveraging the combination of I am statements in a sentence is very easy to remember. And it's also empowering in the morning because it becomes more of like a mantra in your meditation, and you can just recite it. So before too long, studies have proven that begins to sink into the subconscious, and there's nothing we can do about it, right? Your subconscious has no reasoning. Just what it believes is what it creates. So I want that working in my favor. I want the supercomputer working for me. If the non-supercomputer or the dial-up machine is what I'm operating on every day, the 10% or 5% that actually impacts my day for the things that I think about in my conscious, and that's 65 to 90,000 thoughts. Oof. What can I do if I just feed some of those good thoughts into the supercomputer? And that's what I try to do. Yeah. After I do that, I complete my gratitude. And by the time I wake up, I open my eyes, make my bed, and go ready to run a 5K or 5 miles every day.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much. Everybody does something a little bit different. And thank you for sharing your process. Yeah. Because you're doing it first thing in the morning, or even when you're super tired at night, your mind isn't in resistance. So it's that power of suggestion. I love that.
Yep. Yeah. Very cool.
You mentioned something earlier when you were 8 and you realized that I'll just put a 0 on it. And how do I reverse engineer this to kind of break it down and chunk it down when you had no capabilities? And so let's talk about that. Does that feel real, but is it true?
No, well, it definitely felt real that I didn't have any capabilities. I had no resources. And I would strongly argue, because I focused a lot in this area, everything that you need, you already have. Everything. It's at your fingertips. It could be your relationship that you have, the education that you have, something that you focused on way back in high school. It's like, no. Those are capabilities. Those are resources that you have. So way back on the farm, of course, with this realization, it's like, good gracious, that's a big number. It's quite overwhelming. I better figure this out. How can I create value? And you'll notice a lot of common theming in our conversation will be value creation. I'll use different words. You can track it right back to, how am I creating value for those that I serve or those that I want to serve? Because if I'm focused there and consistently focused there, I'll always have a job. Most other people, they're running away from it, or they're just executing on the convention. They're not focused on who they create value for and how they do it. So that was very also empowering. But when I began to look at the resources that I had, and I began to look at, I call it their authentic expression. So not exactly what the label says on the outside of the jar, of what exists on the inside of the jar. And I've continued to apply that also methodology or strategy to every business that I've ever been in. So looking at things in their authentic expression, and when I say authentic expression, I mean people, places, and things. It could be a business. It could be a geographical location. It could be a warehouse. It could be a forklift. It could be a finance team. And I'll give it a little more context. In this finance team, a long time ago, so this has been quite a few businesses ago, I had a decently sized, healthy finance team, but they were not at capacity. They're excellent people, very, very qualified. And I recognize this is another one of the concepts I leverage all the time. It's called remove the film. Film, for me, stands for friction, identification, leverage the market. So in this particular instance, I had recognized there was a big gap in small to medium-sized businesses, financial acumen and management. And what I witnessed, a lot of the guys that I was serving, they had a family member doing finance, or maybe somebody else is doing their invoicing, or here's the best one. We package all of our stuff up at the end of the month and send it to our CPA. I'm like, what are you talking about? So you're going 30 days running this business blind. It's kind of freaky to me. But again, remember what you can with what you have where you are, looking at the capabilities or resources that you have at your fingertips. When I looked at my finance department, I saw a financial services or bookkeeping company. And so I did that really quickly, and it became wildly successful. I recently exited that business maybe a year ago, and it's still thriving. Why? Because it removes the friction, and it removed the film by leveraging the market. And that particular way, I just like anyone, probably listeners, they have a finance department, they have an HR department. I also did the same thing in HR a few years ago. And these are components and capabilities I had at my fingertips, but the convention was they only did our stuff. I'm like, whoa, why is that? If there's a depth of market out there where we could actually provide value for others, and by doing so, if you really look at it, yeah, it's very unconventional, but guess what we're going to do? We're going to learn a lot, because they're not in the same type of business. They have debits and credits and cost of goods and overheads and percentage of revenue and gross profit and net margin, of course. So that a lot of the things do actually transfer, and just repackaging it and messaging it enable me to start a whole nother company. Yeah. So I do that a lot, and I have done it for a lot. Doing that particular kind of soul searching and understanding your resources, it put me into a place of really researching collaboration and what collaboration is. So today I help organizations all over the world leveraging the resources at their fingertips to create bigger value creation, not go hire this, buy this, expand it. No, you already have it. At least you have options that are at your fingertips that most people would never, ever consider. I leverage those to create exponential growth for companies all over the world now. And it's something that I had to do just I felt like I didn't have anything. So it's a little bit out of desperation. I understand that the reason most people move or do anything is out of two reasons: fear and greed. I had both of them. I wanted this big number that I extrapolated, of course, and I was scared to death. There's like, no way I'm ever going to be able to create that. I got to figure this out. And I did. And I continue now. And so now I just want to help others do the same thing.
It's interesting because there are a lot of people out there averse to collaborating because they think, oh, that's the competition. And so I know that our brain can't focus on problem and solution at the same time. We can't focus on competition and collaboration at the same time, but collaboration yields the biggest gain, really. So how do you really develop this mindset of collaboration?
Yes. So for how do we develop the mindset and how we put it in action? I'm a big practical application guy. I love these theories and I love different ways of thinking about things. I am very intrigued on how we put it into action. So I'll give some context back behind that. Collaboration as a default, I have broken down into multiple stages, to the extent if you follow this methodology, you can even transform industries. So where do we get started? First, to me, it's very easy to get started. And I'll put this in context. The obstacle is the way, and collaboration is the way through it. So if you think in your business today, you want and you feel and you need to do something, and you can fill in the blank with whatever that is, you would also envision today, because it's not a reality, it's an obstacle potentially. That obstacle is the way. But if you pretend or imagine for me just for a second that the direction in where you want to head, because you know on the out there is where you need to be. There's a big old boulder in the way of it. Well, that's true. That is the obstacle. It's a big old boulder. How in the world are you ever going to move it? You don't have a truck and you don't have all this equipment to get this big thing out of the way. And I would encourage you to look at the crack that's in the center, because if you envision that this boulder is the obstacle that's directly in front of you, there's a crack right down the center and right through. If you were to walk up and look inside of the obstacle, not turn around and run from it, you would see that through collaboration, there's somebody, person, place, or thing that is there with their hand out in that crack saying, just grab my hand. I can get you through this. And you'll go right through that obstacle. So the long way, we're going to save our money this year, and next year we're going to start this marketing campaign, or we're going to extend their manufacturing. I'm like, whoa, you might consider another strategy. And that is leveraging future money and partnering with the best person on the planet, who not only has gotten you around that obstacle, gotten others through or around the obstacles, but they've been doing it for 20, 35 years. That are best in the business that does it. When you begin to leverage future money, it empowers you to split the future. Because again, today, correct me if I'm wrong, you have this vision of what impact it's going to have for your business. You're not currently living in it, but you are, and I assume most of the folks on the call are big visionaries, or a percentage of them are going to be. So if you can paint such the picture that you see in your mind, and you can work with your financial team, or potentially you're financially inclined as well, and you can quantify what that outcome is going to be. Ask myself a simple question. If somebody, the best person on the planet, can help me create this outcome, how much of this future money am I willing to part with? When that happens, it empowers me to be the buyer, right? Because I'll give you, now flip it on your head. Let's say that you're the best in the industry to do what you do. If you have the opportunity, you have the most confidence to be able to create that outcome. Today, if you're working conventionally, you're probably trading time for money. That's not a convention that wealthy people operate up under. But let's say that I need what it is that you do, and I understand exactly what the impact is going to be to my business if I find the best person on the planet to do what it is that you do. And I'm willing to give up or to partner with this future money, the person who can help me create this outcome, up to 25, 35, 40%. What you'll often find is outside of the convention, you now probably get 2 times the outcome or return for your invested time, effort, and energy that you would do it in the conventional way. Now, another good thing, if you subscribe to this future money concept and collaboration as the vehicle to get you to what it is that you seek in the pinnacle of your business growth, or to begin just to grow exponentially, because you want to do this, or you can do this over and over and over. What you will find is you don't have to let go of the guy who's not performing. Foundationally, and originally I said, I'm looking for the guy or gal or business that can create the outcome, and they're the best on the planet. Because what? I'm paying more than anybody else. Yeah, I'm paying on future money, but if you find the right who that has those capabilities, they're excited about partnering on a performance model that can create this outcome, because they're not currently getting those returns in their conventional business model. But let's say that you'd rock along and this marketing strategy, an example, doesn't produce the fruit. You typically don't have to ask that guy to go away. He's investing and he's got his skin in the game just the same as you. So you're able to, for whatever reason, it's not working out. Whatever that reason is, you'll see those 2 parties come together because they both are going to win when they create the outcome. And for some reason, if it is unable to be worked out, then you part on mutually respective terms and you maintain the relationship. That is also unconventional in today's world. Think of the service providers that you've engaged with in the past, that you've held to the bullet points that were on their proposal. And if that guy was really worth his salt, or that lady, and they were really good at what they do, look at all the awards that they won over the time. For some reason, on your project, it just didn't work out. Wonder when that was. I believe, and I have countless examples, when you back somebody into a corner and you ask them to put all these bullet points on a proposal, and it's all documented up, which is great. If they're really worth their salt, the day after this engagement starts or the ink dries, who do you think is going to have a better idea? And how often is that going to happen throughout this tenure of your relationship? But, we're not aligned with the outcome. we're aligned with being beholden to the bullet points and creating the outcome that the proposal set. I want the secret sauce, the essence, and the true capabilities of those who I'm working with to create even a much bigger outcome than what I was originally prescribed to doing in my own vision. And if you get the right who's that are engaged with your business, a lot of times you can get out of the way. When it talks about that exponential outcome of leveraging these particular strategies, if you've never experienced it, it is extremely rewarding. What you'll also find is whenever you begin to operate this particular way, guess who else shows up? Better who's. They want to
Yep.
be a part of something that's growing, that has a model where everyone wins. Countless times we hear about win-win engagements. This, what I've just shared with you, is an actual operational and methodology you can implement to create those, and everybody wins. And it just attracts more and more better folks who they are the best at what they do.
Yeah.
Life gets a little easier.
Yeah. When you're operating in that way and you're attracting the people who also think in that way, you attract more people who think in that way. And it's interesting, if you think about the mindset, the hard, I'm in the grind, doing things the conventional way, working extra hard. I've worked with entrepreneurs and C-suite people who they have a difficult time letting things go. And so the mindset is, I have to do it myself, or I have to do everything myself, or I'm not successful, or I have to do this, or who would I be without this if I'm empowering others, or letting somebody else take up the slack, leveraging their talents while maybe I'm leveraging different talent. And so it is really, they call some of these mindset things soft skills. There's nothing soft about it. Changing how you see things and how you think. That's what really what's required here.
It reminds me of a very famous quote by Charlie Munger I read recently. I believe it's in the book Clear Thinking by Shane Parrish. Really good book, actually. But this particular quote really stuck with me. I refrain and keep myself from having an opinion before I understand the other person's perspective better than they do. So this just add a zero will make you think differently. Absolutely. And you are human, just like I am. You're probably going to have an immediate opinion. I would encourage you to consider the other person's perspective, this outcome, this thinking that you actually have created because you applied this just add zero methodology. Consider that perspective before you really form an opinion, because it is so easy to get pulled back into the way we always done it. Not specifically for me. I try very hard. I understand every time I do something different or something new or something hard, it creates new connections in my brain. Therefore, I want to make it as many connections as I possibly can, because it just really helps me look at things a little bit differently and help other people.
Yeah. Your mind is going to pull you back to the old way of doing things unless you're aware and you can stop it in its tracks. So how do you work with teams and organizations? Like if somebody listening today is like, oh my gosh, I really want to learn this methodology and some of the other methodologies you've talked about, how would they go about doing that? What would be the roadmap?
Yeah, no problem. So the way that I personally engage in my team, I have growth coaches that I assign to my growth partners, which is, as I mentioned, all over the world in different industries. The very first thing we do is a discovery call. I'm looking for folks that really want to not be like the next guy down the street who, everybody else thinks the guy's crushing it. I'm like, add a zero to what he's doing. Now we want to have a conversation. So if you're looking to grow your net profit, not top line revenue, net profit by $1 million or more next year, you're welcome to, we can have a conversation at any time and just unpack a few different strategies that you might consider. If those sound interesting to you and you'd like to take it to the next step, then we would have a blueprint call to work with you to understand exactly which one of those strategies are best for you where you are at this moment so that you can get started. And then the growth coaches that I mentioned earlier, as you can probably tell, I'm a lot of growth innovation, and I'd be way too much for any one organization for one every day. That's the reason I have so many different operating companies myself. But unpacking which of these growth strategies are right for your organization at that time, my growth coach meets with you on whatever the frequency is that's required to help you along your journey, giving me information and feedback so that I can help complement the thinking and remove those obstacles or leverage them along the way and identify collaborations for you so you can begin to reach not only what your original target was, but hopefully a lot more than that. Yeah.
Well, that sounds like a wonderful, wonderful way to connect with you and start on the journey of really thinking differently and adding that zero to it. I'm really excited. I hope if you're listening today that you definitely get in touch with Chad. And how would they do that?
Oh, no problem. So there's a host of ways. The easiest way is chadtjenkins.com/race. And there'll be, of course, a contact us form. You can submit it there and select a time. And we look forward to unpacking ways that you can grow and begin experiencing that exponential growth in your business.
Thank you so much. This has been
No, it's my
great.
pleasure.
So much goodness here. As we close for today, is there anything else that we left unsaid or any final remarks you'd like to leave with our audience?
Not specifically, just always remember the obstacle is the way and collaboration is the way through it.
I love that. Thank you so much for pouring into our audience. I really appreciate you. I know they're going to get so much value. Again, I encourage you to visit Chad, connect with him, and and remember, everything is created twice, first in your mind and then in physical form. And I hope you join us again next week. Thanks for listening.